Maybe it's because I'm the eldest of 4 siblings, or maybe it's because I enjoy learning, or maybe it's because I'm bossy and I like to tell people what to do. But I've always loved teaching. In fact, when I was 12, I used to play teacher as a game with my friends, and I would give them homework and I would correct their homework with a red pencil. I started teaching religious school when I was 18 and a freshman in college. And I'd gone to Orthodox Jewish day school and to Hebrew high school, so I had a pretty good background. And then I was always studying and boning up to make sure that I knew what I was teaching. And I didn't just teach for the money, though, of course, that really helped. I taught because I always loved Judaism. To me, Judaism gave you a way of life that just elevated and made everything beautiful and meaningful, and I wanted to share that with my students. So I taught all through college, graduate school, and in New York City. I taught while I was trying to be a struggling writer. And I have to say, I was pretty popular. I was young, I was cool, I had wild curly hair, I was kind of like a hippie. And a lot of times my students were less than 10 years younger than I was. So I could relate to their music, to their TV shows, their movies, to everything. And we had a real connection. And even when I started to earn a living as a writer, I just loved teaching, so I continued teaching. So when I moved to LA for my career, I asked, what's the biggest temple in Los Angeles? And everybody said Wilshire Boulevard Temple. So I called, made an appointment, and I came down and I met this cute young rabbi with curly hair and glasses named Steve Leader. And I said to him, oh, and we connected immediately because we're both Midwesterners. He's from Minnesota, I'm from Chicago, he's Milwaukee, and I said, you should hire me to teach in your school because I'm fantastic. And he laughed and he said, okay, I'll give you a chance. And I ended up teaching at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. But now I taught confirmation because I was older, I wanted to teach older kids. And then my career took off, and I adopted a child, and I stopped teaching for a while. I just couldn't fit it into my life until I decided to go to rabbinical school, which was in my 50s. And then I started teaching adults, and I taught conversion and adult b'nai mitzvah, seniors, all kinds of things. And I never thought I would teach kids again because, now I hate to say it, it was like 3 generations. I mean, I couldn't relate to kids. And then COVID-19 happened. And everything went on Zoom. And okay, we had to do all our programming on Zoom. We had to do all of our services on Zoom. And I was handling it pretty well until I get this call from Browerman Elementary School. We would like each rabbi to teach one of our grades once a week during this time. And Rabbi Nanus, we want you to teach the 3rd grade. And there are 4 3rd grades, so you will be teaching 4 times to about 55 8 and 9-year-olds on Zoom. So my heart sank to the pit of my stomach. I just thought, oh my God, how was I going to connect to 8 and 9-year-old children? And how are they going to connect to me? How was I going to teach them anything that would interest them, relate to them, seem meaningful to them in 2020, during a pandemic, in a lockdown, on a screen? I didn't even know what TikTok was. Instagram was a mystery. I had no idea what they thought about, what they cared about, what excited them. And this really worried me, what bored them. I met them for the first time about a year ago, right before Rosh Hashanah, 5781. And here we are together, Rosh Hashanah, 5782. And I am here to tell you that teaching those kids was one of the most beautiful, profound, uplifting experiences of my life. Not only did I teach them, not only did they teach me, but they touched me and moved me in a way that no other class of students had ever done before. And I actually think it's because of the age difference, because of this gap, that I was able to take in what they had to say and recognize their incredible wisdom and marvel at their thoughtful questions and be amazed at their kindness and generosity. And I want to share some of that with you this morning. Because after the past year and a half, if there was ever a Rosh Hashanah where we needed something sweet, something a little stronger than apples and honey to lift our spirits and flavor our prayers with a taste of hope and optimism, it's one of those times. The first time I met my students, I introduced myself and asked them what their Hebrew names were and if they knew who they were named after. Then I asked them to share one thing about themselves that they were proud about. A lot of them said they were good at sports or the arts. One girl said she was a playwright and wanted to be famous, and I related to that completely. And then one gentle, soft-spoken boy raised his hand and said, "I'm an ambassador to sick people in the hospital." "Really?" I said. "What does that mean exactly?" "I go there and visit on weekends. Sometimes I collect toys and bring them presents." I later found out that this boy himself had been in the hospital and spent many months there. And now at the tender age of 8, he was giving back. The Talmud teaches that visiting the sick is one of the holiest mitzvot in the Torah, comparable to saving a life. And it's guaranteed to bring you blessings in this world and the next. And it says that when you visit someone who's sick, you remove 1/60th of their pain. Here was a child making a difference in the lives of others because he understood what they were going through. The following week, we listened to the shofar and discussed the meanings of the different sounds. Tekiah, I said, is a call to pay attention and show up. What do you have to show up or pay attention to? Shavarim reminds us of our brokenness or the brokenness of the world. What do we need to repair that is broken? Teruah is an alarm to wake us up. What do we have to wake up to be reminded of? I have to show up for school because that's my job. My grandma is kind of broken because she's sick and we can't even see her. I think I should call her more. She lives by herself and she might be lonely. I need to be reminded that even though we're stuck at home, I have a nice house and an iPad and good food and everything I really need. It's a lot worse for other people. Beautiful answers to beautiful and difficult questions. How would you answer them? On Yom Kippur, I had the kids create their own book of life. On the cover, they wrote their own names, and inside, the names of all of those whom they wanted to have a good year. Of course, they wrote their family and their friends and their pets. By the way, one girl has a pet tarantula that she showed me on Zoom. And then a lot of them wrote, everyone in the whole world. There were no Democrats, Republicans, red states, blue states, races, religions, gender identities, just everyone, God. Please give them a good year. There is one mitzvah in the Torah that is repeated 36 times, far more than any other. Remember the stranger because you were a stranger in the land of Egypt. 36, which is 2 times 18. A double chai in my mind, because to me it means it brings life to the person who performs the mitzvah and life to the person who receives the mitzvah. It seems that these third graders inherently understand that even those with whom we don't know or don't agree with, who are so different, are still worth remembering and caring about. Finally, I asked them to create a prayer for all of us for the coming year because, as we know, we're all in this together. We really are connected. Out of the mouths of babes, I heard, please, God, help us find a cure for COVID. Help feed the homeless and find them houses. Protect the elephants and other endangered species. Help us take care of the earth before it's too late. We need rain, but no mudslides and no earthquakes. Make people stop hating each other. These are not new requests. I know that. But when you hear the sincerity, the concern, the anxiety, the worry in the voice of a child. These appeals take on a weight and an importance that is impossible to ignore. They care so much, I thought to myself. How can we not work to make this world a better place for them? As the months wore on, the children opened their hearts and minds to me. We played games, created art projects, read stories, and acted out plays about Jewish values, such as kindness, gratitude, justice, responsibility. And they shared their philosophies and fears about what it's like to live through a pandemic when you're 8 years old. What's one kind thing you can do this week? A lot of kids said, help my mom, because I guess they didn't. A lot more said, not fight with my brother or sister, which is a huge challenge when you're living with people for 24 hours a day. And one boy said, if someone bullies my friend, I will stick up for him. What's one good thing that came out of this quarantine? I get to eat lunch with my parents. My mom and I bake challah together. My dad and I bake challah together. Almost all of them answered some version of, I get to spend more time with my family. No one said, I get packages from Amazon every day, or I get to play more video games. There's a painted sign hanging on the wall in my kitchen which reads, the best things in life aren't things. They were in the 3rd grade, and they had already figured that out. Write a letter to your future self and tell them what you've learned from living during COVID. If you can go to school, don't complain. If you can see your friends, be happy. If you don't have to wear a mask, you are really lucky. Finally, what responsibilities do you have at home during this time? So one rather shy boy who hardly talked at all, he shared that he did the laundry for his entire family. Really, I said, impressed. Let me ask you a question. When do you put in the detergent? Before the clothes or after the clothes? He said with confidence, detergent before, fabric softener after. Wow, I said, you really know your stuff. Then I invited him to come and do my laundry, if I'm being honest. The Kabbalists teach that every person contains a divine spark, a tiny light of holiness that is part of us, which is the Tselem Elohim, the image of God. I believe it is up to us to ignite those sparks by recognizing the value of those around us, by really seeing them and appreciating their light within. Every child in the 3rd grade had a special light. And when I recognized it, I watched them open up like beautiful flowers. Imagine if we all did this, not just with children, but everyone. Imagine if we acknowledged the inner beauty that each one of us possesses. What would our world be like? On Rosh Hashanah, we ask God to inscribe us in the book of life. But the fact is that we have our own book of life that we ourselves inscribe. Some chapters are written by our relationships with other people. Some chapters are crafted by the decisions and choices we make. And some very special chapters are created by the lessons we learn. And that is precisely why my chapter with the 3rd grade is one of the highlights of my book of life. It is filled with lessons, not just for me, but for all of us as we strive to move out of the darkness of this past year and a half. Lessons about what's important, about what counts, about the difference between what we want and what we need, about what we struggle with and what we hope for, about the power of love and the holiness of every human being, about finding the good even in the worst of times. Just as we dip apples into honey, may we all dip our hearts and minds into the sweet words of these sweet children. Let them inspire us and guide us to become more caring, more understanding, and more grateful in the coming year. Let us all follow their example and be inscribed for a beautiful, sweet chapter in our book of life. Shana Tova.